Welcome. Well, you're at home with Jim and Joy, and you are an important part of our EWTN family. And we are delighted that you have welcomed us to your home. You know, we would love to hear from you. So send us an email with your question or your comment to jimandjoy@ewtn.com. And today we are very excited to have Dr. Theresa Burke with us. She is the foundress of Rachel's Vineyard, Grief to Grace, and Duty to Heal. Now, these outstanding programs are offered in group and retreat format and provide a recovery process for victims of trauma. These retreats are offered throughout the world, and they have been translated in over 35 languages. And you could go to the website rachelsvineyard.org or grieftoggrace.org.
Well, you said it was a blessing to have Theresa with us today.
Yes.
50 countries, 35 languages. What is she dealing with? Post-traumatic stress disorder as regards abortion, as regards abuse, as regards various victims of war. And God's graced her with a format that brings healing to these people that have been so traumatized. And I don't want to overspeak because she's a professional, she's a psychologist, psychiatrist, and there. But the impact of trauma on the brain.
In the body.
The senses, the brain, the body keeping count of what's happened. Trauma, recalling, nightmares. If you've ever had PTSD, for any reason, she's dealing with those three key areas, but it could be the loss of a loved one suddenly, near-death experiences, an accident, whatever it might be. You know the trauma. You know how out of control you feel. You want to be in control. You want to be okay, but you're not okay. And so people talk this through with a psychologist or somebody to help them. They take drugs. Maybe these things work to some degree. But Theresa, is using a format. What is she doing there? How is it touching the senses? What is going on? What's happening? That tens of thousands and possibly hundreds of thousands that experience trauma through abortion, through abuse, through war and violence, or somehow, some way being touched by the Lord Jesus Christ and the power of the Spirit through the formats that she's using and are finding healing. And also some of them get equipped to bring healing to other people. So may God bless you as you hear Theresa today, and may the Lord's healing virtue and power come upon you and give you hope and peace. We'll be right back. Plenty more to come. Please don't go away.
Welcome back. Well, we are so excited to have Dr. Theresa Burke with us. She is the foundress of Rachel's Vineyard, Grief to Grace, and Duty to Heal. These beautiful programs are offered in group retreat format and provide a recovery process for victims of trauma. Now, these retreats are offered throughout the world and have been translated in over 35 languages, and right now they are in over 50 countries. You could go to the website rachelsvineyard.org or grieftoggrace.org. And besides that, Theresa is a wife and a mother, and she has many children, but yet God used this beautiful woman to birth this unbelievable healing ministry. So Theresa, we are so excited to have you on At Home, and we want you first to tell our family how God started this beautiful outreach, healing, fruitful ministry.
Joy and Jim, it's so good to see you and be with you. And I'd have to say that the groundwork was laid actually when I gave a fiat as one of the first American pilgrims in Medjugorje. And I wanted to share that I traveled there after teaching skiing in Switzerland and hearing that the Blessed Mother was appearing there. And we were there when the priest was in jail. Black helicopters were going above. And we recorded, we bought videotape equipment and we recorded and made a movie called Medjugorje, A Message of Peace that was translated into many languages. And my father met us. He's the one who told us about it. And when we met up with him, we just sort of made our way there miraculously. And we were in the room with the visionaries every single night. We were interviewing them. We were hearing all the message. In fact, when my father died, they sent priests from Medjugorje to celebrate his funeral because they called him the father of Medjugorje in the United States. So, and with that, there's ties that go to EWTN as well, because Mother Angelica was friends with my father. He was helping her with a lot of fundraising before she was raising money to build the satellite. And she used to call him on the phone all the time to say, Stanley, what's the latest in Medjugorje? Right before she got on the air. So it's nice to be back with you guys at EWTN.
Right.
But there at Medjugorje, I was in the room as closer to my screen, to the visionaries, and I didn't see anything, thankfully, but I did feel an incredible peace and an indescribable love. And I said to Our Lady right there in her presence, I said, I'm Jack of all trades, master of none. But if there's something in this world that you need from me, I'm your girl, I'm here for you. And to me, I saw that as a fiat. Never in my life could I imagine what that would have meant, especially that's before I was married. And then when I got married, I felt there were some quickenings along the way. A lot of people hear the eating disorder story of, I start my book Forbidden Grief with that, as to being having the subject of abortion come up one night.
Yes.
And it was like a bomb going off in our group. One woman was in a lot of pain and symptoms. Another woman started cursing out anybody who should make her feel guilty about abortion. Another girl left the room. So here we saw the earliest fragments of traumatic reactions: the fight or flight, the freeze, the run away and avoid. And I think it's an interesting microcosm of the bigger world. But when I went to my supervisor, he shook his finger at me and he said, you have no business prying into people's abortions. Abortion is a private, personal thing. And I was instructed not to speak about it. So, of course, what else is there to do but speak about it? So I started one of the first therapeutic support groups that I knew of. And this was over 40 years. I mean, it'll be 40 years this coming year. So that's a long time. It's been my life's work, spreading this ministry and training professionals, training pro-lifers about the trauma of abortion. Because while it may be a choice, many people have no idea of the impact that they will suffer as a traumatic experience, and suffering the loss of the death of their child happens inside their bodies. Yes. So that's how we got started. And no, I never dreamed it would go all over, but I credit that to Blessed Mother, because she knows that her son wants to heal people, and he is the reason that it spread, because he wants to heal not just people here, but people throughout the world.
Well, your book is a tremendous book from so many angles, and we use a number of the findings and principles where we work at our Pregnancy Medical Center. And so you're recalling your early meeting with these women with eating disorders. So it really wasn't initiated dealing with post-abortion healing, it was eating disorders. And these women, when you came back into the room, if I'm recalling correctly, they were saying, like, you would say, what's going on here? And they're saying, well, some of us are believers, some of us aren't, but we have one thing in common, and that's abortion. And that our various groups, those who aren't necessarily religious, are saying, well, you made the best decision you can make, it's okay. And those on the religious end as well, though, were saying, well, people say to us, you've talked to Jesus, you're forgiven, or you've gone to confession, so everything's okay now, right? And they were saying, no, it's not right. Whether we're believers or non-believers, it's not quite right with us, and we've been forbidden to grieve or to share our stories. And that was where you started thinking through this whole area of healing and abortion trauma, what could be done to help heal, bring healing, correct?
Yes, and I saw so quickly that talking about the trauma actually made it worse. My very first support groups, when I left the eating disorder and started my own group just for this, our groups were always free. They were offered continually, and the folks who came into them, I learned that they would stop at the bar on the way home because they would get activated. Their trauma would be activated. One woman would call me in tears at 11 o'clock at night just because we opened the topic. And this is when I had the idea that I got to do something besides let people talk about it. And then I turned to my faith. And my faith has the power of rituals. So I created my own rituals to allow grieving because we even know from neuroscience um, what happens to a person when they even listen to someone else's story or a scripted version, someone reading their story. What we see is that dissociation actually happens in the brain. And after a traumatic event, um, the Broca's area shuts down. That's our ability to talk.
Yeah.
And the frontal cortex goes offline. That's where we are able to integrate our emotional and cognitive experience. So our thoughts and our feelings are disconnected. And then what happens is people can't talk about it, so they're quiet. And we also know people that have gone know that abortion hurts them because not everybody is disconnected through trauma, but that people would go every year to be hospitalized on the anniversary of their abortion or on the anticipated due date. And so many cases of
Yes.
postpartum depression and even psychosis abounded with this. But when they would be hospitalized, they were not allowed to talk about it. And so many counselors were not trained in post abortion trauma, even to this day. It's considered healthcare, and it's hard to even get research published in this country because it's been politicized. And so many women have suffered longer and harder than they should have because society isn't recognizing the grief and the shame and the pain or the need to reconcile, like you said, Jim, because there's a need to unpack all this. So while you know that the sacrament of reconciliation as a Catholic is there, or to confess, it doesn't allow you to process that experience. It doesn't allow for you to forgive yourself. A lot of people might know God forgives. Some people don't. That's for sure. But they don't know how to forgive themselves, and they violated a very fundamental human mothers and fathers to nurture and protect their child. So it's a grievous trauma that is suffered inside the body. And I think that gives us insight into why so many people are freaking out right now, especially after Roe versus Wade was turned back to the states to decide. It pricked the conscience of the nation, and I might add the world. And there's no greater opportunity for healing than now because people are questioning it. And with the new election, it's made it even worse. And we saw the reactions after it was overturned. You know, going to crisis pregnancy centers and putting up the words, if you're not safe, if we're not safe, you're not either, and doing damage to crisis pregnancy centers. So we see the sort of the spilling out of all the trauma on and projecting of it, where you can blame other people for the way you feel inside. But this has all to do, as Vezel Kolk says, he's a guru in the field right now, but he says that the body tells the story. And I saw this years ago in so many ways. And I also saw a lot of it, in my groups and everything, where we had to find another way to address this because all the trauma is in the body. And when the body gets activated, it goes into fight. You want to fight and scream, curse at everybody. Flight is where you want to avoid the whole discussion and run away with a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry. And then there's the freeze, where you're just so overwhelmed with emotion that you don't know what to do. And then there's fear with fawning. Fawning is where you want to comply with what everybody else says. You don't, because if people are saying that's not your problem, you're going to agree with them because you feel shame, you feel sadness. So fawning is people pleasing and not being able to say no, being in agreement even when it's not your own, even not when it's not your own morality.
Now, Theresa, you were sharing before about, you were meeting with people weekly, and then, then people were leaving and then going to the bars because or they just don't talk. However, the body responds to all this. And so, tell us the format, because your format of the retreat is a weekend, so it's a designated set time away where you're going to set time aside for self-care, but then also for the emotional and the spiritual healing that so many men and women are craving. So what does a retreat look like?
Well, I changed from the support group very quickly. In fact, it had just been published and I was revising it into a weekend retreat because I thought that it would be safer, that everyone would be together in a place where we could continue to process the trauma and get to the other side of it meaning allowing God to transform it. And what makes Rachel's Vineyard so different than most other programs is that it's a sensory-based treatment. Sensory-based treatment means that we activate the senses, which ends up being grounding. And grounding is a way that keeps people in the present moment rather than being fearful of the future or obsessing about the past. It keeps them in the present moment and allows them to have an experience of grieving. So all of the rituals are designed to have a dialogue and bring Jesus straight into the center of the pain. So we have living scripture exercises and meditations. And we know that meditation and prayer tames the amygdala and it helps people integrate helps them stay in the present. And the Holy Spirit has had the science all along, and the church fathers could tell you that. But I like to say that the church has the medicine, all these elements of ritual, the senses, the incense. I made up many rituals that have grounding. We carry around rocks, and we're lighting candles, and we're pouring water, and we have bereavement dolls that help them to grieve, and we use them in the memorial service. And what you see with the bereavement dolls is that very natural love that a mother or father would have for their baby. They're able to express that with their body because our trauma is held in that body. And there's a lot of shakiness, when it's, this is where people will have a tremor, and it's a sign that they're being pushed outside their window of tolerance. It means that there's so much activation of the sympathetic nervous system, that's fight or flight. The parasympathetic nervous system is what helps us calm, but when that's too activated, you go into numbing behaviors and addiction, and even an eating disorder, places where you can dissociate into another realm of focus than the emotional pain. So it's a way to shut down. Pornography addiction would be in the same realm.
Theresa, we're gonna hold you at this point. We're gonna take a break, hold you over for the final segment, so you can share further with us the truth, and the truth will set us free. We'll be right back. There's plenty more to come. Don't go away. Welcome back. Speaking with Dr. Theresa Burke, healing a traumatized culture in so many ways, especially abortion healing and recovery. Theresa, you speak about abortion, and we see abortion causing incredible conflict in marriages, in families, in elections, culturally. What's going on with the conflict? There's a lot of anger, a lot of self-defense, it seems. So maybe some people aren't healed up as they can be, and they're kind of rationalizing or finding that they get alleviation of pain through their anger or through this being a cause. Unpack that for us, if you would.
Well, there's a little saying I like that says, when the conscience is aborted, the truth gets distorted. And I think that's where we are. There's been such a distortion of truth, just in even the desire to want to have the right. It's almost like abortion has been not only enshrined in our brains, but in, before it was turned back, it was seen as a form of empowerment rather than a deceptive sort of victory. So, and I love this quote from Fulton Sheen, if I can say it correctly. First, that we overlook evil, and then we permit evil, and then we legalize evil, and then we celebrate evil, and then we persecute those who still call it evil. And then he said, evil may have its hour, but God will have his day. And I think that that's sort of the trajectory we've gone. And the more that we dehumanize our own children, the more we ourselves become dehumanized. And I think this is a really important thing that's going on right now is that we have to be radically committed to healing if we hope to see human dignity and sanity, even, and the natural attachment to our children uh, restored in this culture. And I think that when we don't transform pain, it's transmitted to the next generation, the next generation. So, like after the election, you could see that a 10-year-old or a 9-year-old is crying hysterically because, and these moms are worried that they're not going to have the right to abortion. What are we saying? What are we saying? That if I don't have that choice, I would have aborted you, or that we should all have that choice? Because it really denigrates the attachment. And I think that it's a huge attachment injury, and we rarely talk about it. And it's a much longer kind of a discussion than we have time for today. But the truth builds a bridge to wholeness, and it makes a tender space for the work of grieving. And we have to be able to do that because there's so much trauma. And unless we can help people through the eyes of mercy recognize the many challenging faces of grief. So I see all this craziness in the culture as a form of grieving.
Yes.
Because they're in the stages of grief, right? And it's easy to be angry than it is to be so vulnerable and broken. Anger feels more powerful than to experience the extreme vulnerability. But what is interesting in this dialogue is first they were all upset, and then Trump wins.
Yeah.
So now the political thing, they're panicking. We should leave. We should shave our heads. But it's interestingly enough, it's turning to now the men. We're not going to have sex anymore. And kind of like going from blaming everybody else to how do I stop myself from being hurt again and again? Because the interesting thing is that
Theresa, I'm sorry to stop you here. We've run out of time. Thank God we have you for tomorrow, that you can share even more about the healing process. So God bless you, and God bless all of your loved ones. You're an important part of this family. You're never alone. You're always at home with Jim and Joy. Bye now.